Welcome to the MAM Journals. Some of you may recall that I actually road tested one of these a few months ago with a potential interest in buying one. We liked it so much we did decide to go ahead and order one, and the purpose of this video is to really give you some feedback as to what it's like to ride and own 900 miles in. I think a logical way to go through this is to firstly talk about what we were trying to achieve when we ordered the bike and what we actually wanted to do with it, and that will lead into the specification that we've put on it. We should go through what we've done. I'd then like to talk about how I'm getting on with the engine and how I'm finding the power and the various modes on the bike. I'd then like to talk about the clutch and the gearbox, and we'll then move on to suspension, tyres and brakes. I've actually changed the suspension and I'll cover why I changed the suspension and what we're trying to achieve. I'd then like to talk about the luggage capacity, because we bought the bike with a view to occasional touring. Our idea of touring is a short weekend away, although we can do longer trips. How we got on with the luggage capacity and how that worked. And I'd then obviously like to include on that, what is it like in terms of rider comfort, using ergonomics and riding the bike. And naturally, because we bought this for its two up when we go away, how did my wife get on sat on this seat? So I'll give you that feedback, and then finally I'll be coming back and giving concluding comments about what our experience has been in the 900 miles that we've enjoyed so far. I hope you enjoy the video. So why did I buy this bike? Well, now I'm a man of leisure, which is of course a euphemism for unemployable. We've got more time to actually go away on bikes, so I was looking for something that we could tour on that was easy for me to have good contact with the floor and slow speed manoeuvrability and in traffic. I wanted it to have touring capacity and luggage capacity for the sort of journeys that we do. I wanted it to be comfortable for my wife, fun to ride, and probably slightly more performance than we've got in our current touring capability bike. So I wanted something faster, and I wanted it to be fun to ride solo or with Pillion without actually needing to go away for a weekend and have all the luggage on. So I was really looking for a dual purpose bike that fulfilled those criteria. Obviously the idea is that you order a bike specification to suit what you're trying to do with it, and we've tried to do that with this one. Specification of the bike it's the GT Plus version in the UK, which means that it came with the panniers. There was a bit of delay in the panniers arriving, but as you can see it's resolved now. Also ordered it with heated grips, which are yet to arrive. The bigger touring screen, which I'll touch on when I go through the section on rider comfort. The bike is fitted with the Suzuki sliders front and rear. I think they're nice looking. And we also opted for the tank bag and gibby ring, and I've opted for the Nitron shock absorber system on it, both at the rear and at the front, and I'll talk about those a bit later as to why I did that. We also ordered some bag liners from the internet. We went for the Gibby 35-37 size, which seemed to fit okay. On the road, this bike costs £14,830 in the specification that we ordered. The heart of any bike is of course the engine, and as many of you probably know, this is equipped with a 999cc straight 4 liquid cooled. It produces 112 kilowatts or 152 PS, or if you're a bit like me and thinking old-fashioned money, 150 brake horsepower. It's a nice engine. The exhaust is a bit muted. I always think about Suzuki's as going like the wind and howling like banshees, and it certainly goes like the wind, but if it's a banshee, it's a small one. it produces its power 106 newton meters of torque at 9,250. It's getting about 45 miles per gallon. It's a nice broad smooth torque power delivery. You've got 3 modes. Let's get on there. And the B mode, Suzuki's say in their sort of promotional pack that the B mode is designed for touring, and I have to say our early experience of it is they're absolutely bang on. That is the right mode for touring. It's got plenty of power, but a nice gentle uptake, so you don't sort of fling your passenger off the back if they're not suitably braced. I have used it in C, in rain, but I'll touch on that when I talk about tyres. It's got 5 traction modes. I've been running it in a combination either 2 or 3, and when I've just come back from a weekend away touring, so I've had it in 3 and B with a quick shifter on. Some riders talk about running these, even running 6 gear right down to slow speeds. I tend to be running when I'm sort of in town or slower areas, possibly in 3rd, and it's very easy and tractable from those sort of revs onwards, really. So engine, I would say a tick in the box. Very pleased with how it's performing and how it rides. All right, so the clutch and the gearbox I wanted to talk about. This is fitted with a quick shift gearbox, which you have an on and off mode on it, and I have to say it's a complete joy. Really makes it very easy to drive. First and second gear, low speed is very changeable, very easy to move between the two. It's also got something known as low RPM assist. I've yet to work out the technicalities of what they're doing there. And it's got a Suzuki clutch assist system, SCAS, which combines with a slipper clutch, and it is very, very easy to ride in traffic as a result of that. And of course, when you're pressing on a little bit out in the open road, it makes the traditional quick shifter effect that we've all come to know and love. Compared to my previous F version, this is such a big step forward. I even managed to drive through central Birmingham, which is the second largest, I know a lot of you aren't in the UK, and it's the second largest city in the UK, and it was really, really easy to ride through and filter through traffic, all assisted by the quick shifter and the clutch mechanisms to make it very comfortable to ride indeed. So that's definitely a tick in the box. Right, so let's talk about tyres on the bike. It's fitted with these Dunlop Sports, and they say they were specifically designed for the bike. And as you can tell, in the early days of a bike, I don't push a bike hard. I'll let it come to me over time. I'm in no rush, and I'll get more and more confident with it as I go on. It's interesting. I've read. I try not to read or watch too many other reviews before I've done a report on something, because I'm just concerned it might subconsciously affect my views. And I think if these videos are to have any value, it's nice to have an independent, average rider's view as how they find it in the real world. But I have obviously read a few since the bike was launched, and very mixed reviews on these tyres. There was one review, visor down, saying how fantastic these tyres were in the wet, and another review from Motorcycle News, Michael Neves, who I hold in very high regard as a motorcycling journalist. He was saying he didn't like them in the wet, and I have to say I'm definitely in the Michael Neves camp on this one. It may have been because I've got quite sporty suspension on it that it was a bit stiff, and it didn't give me any feel. But I rode it for 100 or so miles in torrential rain, and it was frankly alarming. I shan't be sorry to see the end of those tyres. Don't feel the need to change them desperately. It's perfectly adequate in the dry, and certainly at the speed at which we're currently riding, they're okay. But I did not like the wet performance of the tyres. I guess we're all different and have different opinions, which is fine. And in terms of the brakes, obviously it's got 4-pot Brembos on it and 310mm floating discs. In terms of how I actually found them, I know again some people on the internet forums and talking about bikes are saying they didn't like the brakes, they found them sort of soggy. I didn't. I find them perfectly adequate. They don't have the bite of some of the other bikes I've got. Some of the things, well, I mean, even that one there. I mean, that they're quite sharp brakes, and that BMW 1000RR. I mean, it stops on a sixpence. But this is, it's a tourer, and if you got two up, having nice progressive brakes, I found made it easier to ride and a bit smoother. So I'm finding the brakes are good for the way I ride and the sort of riding that I want to do. I'm going to touch the suspension a bit later. I'll take the panniers off and show you what's actually on there, and we'll talk through that then. In terms of luggage capacity, we went, as I touched on earlier, we went for these we bought some Givi inner bags, and they sort of fit. They're not perfect, but they are very comfortable, and they're quite wide. You can actually get quite a lot in there. I think they're 35 to 37 litres. I think I mentioned that earlier. And we certainly found we had plenty of luggage capacity for the sort of journeys we do. We rarely go away for more than, say, 4 or 5 days. And I know other tourists do significantly more than that. But currently, it does fit our needs. We went for this, which is this tank bag. I've not used a tank bag before, but actually I found once I've learnt the knack of sort of getting out on and off comfortably, and we could get all of our daytime travelling needs in there, leaving the luggage secure so that we only took it out in the evening. So that worked, and it didn't obscure. One of my concerns is it might obscure my vision at the front there, and as you can see, I put it quad lock because I'm actually using my phone on there. And again, perfect, great view of the instrumentation, which is crystal clear and easy to use. So, yeah, the panniers and luggage have worked very well. I know there's a bit of a debate about, well, why don't we fit a top box? I've heard various reasons. I'm actually waiting for Suzuki to come back to me with an official explanation of why they don't recommend fitting top boxes. But as you can, I can sort of understand it. I wasn't alarmed by that. I knew it was the case when I ordered the bike, and putting significant weight behind the axle it's never been a great idea, whatever regulations and advice is going on at any time. So and it is a high performance bike. This is, this bike cracks on. So interesting enough, this is the Kawasaki I always get this confused, SX, I think the Ninja 1000, which is the equivalent of this. They make the same recommendation, although Givi do actually provide aftermarket boxes, and I'm sure there will be aftermarket boxes available for this, but whether you get one or not, the policy of not putting too much weight in the back of it is probably sound. But in terms of luggage capacity, yep, tick in the box. Going back to the sort of rider comfort and cockpit sort of control and ergonomics, as I say, these instruments are stunningly clear, very intuitive controls, which I like. In fairness, I've got a few Suzuki, so I'm pretty familiar with how their minds work when they're setting them up, and I do find them very, very easy to read and change the views as you ride. The vibrations, which you'll always get from a 4, they're certainly manageable. It's not excessive, and the handlebar stance is nice and comfortable. I haven't yet used it. It's got an app called My Spin. I haven't set that up yet. I've been using my phone on the quad lock for my navigation. I will later on, when I've got more time, faff about with that and see if I can get it to work. It's fitted with cruise control, which is obviously very useful on a bike that you tour on. I haven't used it yet. The bike's not yet fully running, and I don't like leaving it on a constant speed setting during that period. I like to vary it. Negatives. Unfortunately, I have got one on this, and I don't like criticising other people's work because people spend months trying to get things right, and then some amateur YouTuber rips it apart. But I've got to say that sadly this touring screen isn't working for me. It might just be the length of my body or whatever it might be. I'm not getting buffeting off the top, but I am getting significantly more wind noise than I do with any other bikes that I ride. Let me just turn that off, stop that flashing. And if you put your hand sort of up here when you're riding and you move it along, it's a very even flow of air coming around. So I'd say you don't get buffeting, but it is distractingly loud. I've tried various helmets. I've even resorted to, God forbid, earplugs, and because I'm old school, but none of it has really achieved what I want to do. I've got to sort that one out. I'm going to try putting the standard screen back in, because although I've got this one, I've got the standard screen as well. So I'll try that and see whether I've moved the noise away from my head, and I'll put up with a bit more wind noise on the chest. The overall wind protection is actually very good, and in the rain, surprisingly, the front sort of fairings did actually make a difference and kept quite a bit of rain off me. So mostly very positive about it. It is a comfortable bike to ride, and you can cover high mileage on it. So how did my wife get on at the back? Right, so looking at the back here, they have changed the chassis frame to allow this seat to be wider at the back and less angled forward. So my wife's initial reaction after the first 100 miles, we just went out for a ride and see how she got on. She said, well, it's more comfortable than I thought it would be. And that later progressed to, actually, this is okay. So although a lot of riders, we look at those and think, I'm not sure that's going to work. It's not really what we think that matters. It's the people who get on the back and how they find it. And the view was, that is comfortable. She didn't mind hanging on to those handles backwards. She said it's more natural than you think, and certainly more comfortable. And I think probably the longest one journey we did without stopping was probably about 130, 140 miles. And of course, one of the things my wife actually liked about it, which I hadn't thought, because I said, when we bought it, I said, you do know there's no top box that can go with this. And her feedback after actually getting on it is, one, it's a lot easier to get on because she just swings her leg through the space at the back and then back onto the other, as opposed to trying to sort of lift it up and push it through as you do when you've got top box on the top. But actually, something which hadn't even occurred to me, she said, well, I don't actually like the vibration in my back that I get from the top box on our BMW GS, so it's actually more comfortable. So I would say that is actually, from my wife's perspective, a positive rather than a negative, which was interesting. And the other thing that she'd learnt to do was, because the bike has got significant acceleration when you're overtaking, obviously if your arms are sort of backwards and your feet are forward, there might be a tendency to lift your feet. And we did sort of, the first couple of times, it did lift her feet as we went for an overtake. And but what she said she'd done is she's learnt to actually brace her legs against the back of the panniers and put the toe of her foot onto the foot peg, which gave her a bit more stability. So my wife's overall conclusion, when I asked her sort of after being back for a little while, and said, well, what did you think? She describes the bike as comfortable and exhilarating, and that is a result. Right, so I've taken the panniers off so that we can have a proper look at the suspension, and I went for the Nitron system. This is actually at the top of the range R3. They do an R1, which is a rear suspension unit on its own, and you can get a hydraulic adjuster with that. This is the R3, which gives you the ability to adjust both high speed and low speed compression, probably over the top for a rider of my style, but it's nice to do it and have fun. And you can adjust on the rear, and it's a bit tricky to get in there to see actually, or despite the fact I've put it on a ramp. Let's see if I can get in there somehow. You can probably just see it up under there. There is a gnarled sort of knob in there which you can adjust the rebound. All of the suspension is adjustable easily on the go, with the exception of this, the rebound, and obviously with a separate nut there you can adjust the actual length of the shock itself, but they're probably not things you need to do absolutely on the go. But the rest of it is very easy. You can do it. They've fitted it so that you can put the panniers on comfortably and still get access to it. You can reach down the side if you wanted to, if you felt the need to suddenly adjust as you move. And also on this side, for me, the real driver was about having remote preload. The thoughts, I regularly want to change from solo riding to pillion riding, and also then pillion with full-on luggage, and the ride height is for me a very important factor, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. But the fact that you can adjust that easily as you go without faffing about ring spanners was really my driver. They're nicely made units, and I've got a few fitted on various bikes. I do like the product. I think they're well made and they function very well. And the front, they put in the front cartridges, and your adjustment is on the top buttons there. So there's a couple of photos on screen showing the front two. One's rebound, one's compression. Very easy to adjust. You just use one of those. I've normally got one of those around me somewhere when I go out, so I can experiment with it. This is just the sag ring for adjustment, and that's the lowest point it came when I persuaded my wife that we were going to do an emergency brake and just see how far that travels to help me adjust it so that it could cope. It was the right settings when we were fully laden, and as you can see, it was fine. It gives a very nice controllable ride, and I'm pleased with the outcome. But my main driver is really about height. One of the key criteria in selecting this bike was its original height and enabling me to get both feet securely on the ground, which is obviously when the bike's rolling you don't need to do that, but when we've got a GS 1200 which is quite a tall bike and quite heavy, and we had a few weekends away in it. I found I just didn't feel secure. Slow speed junctions, filtering through traffic, and so I was in a position where I had to select which foot I was going to put down prior to actually arriving at the junction to make sure that I had a stable platform. This bike in standard form enabled me to have good contact, but the reason I put the suspension on was the ability to adjust it even further if I wanted to, and adjust the preload in a way that enabled us to carry the full luggage while retaining the geometry and the levelness of the bike and still getting foot contact. And it's been very successful in that. It's managed to achieve that objective. So for that reason alone, the suspension for me has been money well spent. So what are our overall views on the bike? Has it achieved the majority of the objectives that we set out in the first place when we decided to buy it? Certainly in terms of the dimensions of the bike, and by putting in the nitrons on, I've got that adjustability that I was looking for. It's very, very easy to ride in traffic and at slow speeds. Manoeuvrability is great, 2-up, so I've been very pleased with that. Does my wife enjoy being on the back, and is she comfortable and feels secure? And that's been a yes. And do I think it's an exciting and fun bike to ride? So, which I do. So I would say that we're very happy with our progress so far. Obviously I've got to deal with the wind noise issue, but that's not the end of the world. I don't expect any bike to be absolutely perfect, but it's certainly fulfilled many of the characteristics and qualities that we were looking for when we made the purchase. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it useful. And if you did, perhaps you'd be kind enough to press the like button, or indeed if you like taking your information in this way and you want to subscribe to the channel, then please do, you'd be very welcome. But whether you do either of those, what I do hope you do is you ride safe and you stay well.